Hi, and welcome into episode 21 of The Well. I'm Drew.
21. And I'm Kat.
And we have another super special guest today I'm super excited about. How about you,
Yes.
Catherine?
I
How
am.
about we do something a little different? Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, since I'm good at improvising, I'll say yes, but I think most people will be like, no, I don't want to.
True.
You do it. But yes, no. My name's Joe Pardavilla. I'm a podcaster, lifelong old school radio guy who's pivoted into the more digital realms of YouTube and podcasting such. And my day-to-day, I help and consult entrepreneurs and business people create content online, whether it's videos or podcasts and such. So that's my day job. But mostly what I'm doing is trying to share all the wisdom that I accumulated during my 20 plus years of working in radio in New York City and trying to help people today.
Awesome.
Love it.
So we like to start off with a question, which is, I know, crazy, right?
Wow.
Starting off with a question. So
Shocker.
I know, revolutionary, right?
This is wild. You guys are doing a podcast and you're going to ask questions?
I know. We are absolutely
Let me get my
cutting
notes back
against the
here,
grain.
Andrew. Hold on. Podcast that asks a question. Cool. All right. I just want to make it.
See, I'm not even in the business, and you're already getting great advice. So,
Yeah, this is good.
what is your favorite thing to eat for breakfast?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm one of these nerds that's all about getting protein in their system. So it's usually a version of eggs. So it's,
Okay.
Your simple sunny side, scrambled, omelets, all that jazz, egg sandwiches, but it's always has some sort of egg component. And I'm old enough to remember, you guys are probably not, but there was a time where they said, only eat 2 eggs a week or you are going to drop dead. Turns out that was wrong. You can eat as many eggs as you want.
Yeah.
So luckily, I'm still alive, and I eat pretty much eggs 6-7 days a week.
I love eggs too.
Good
Egg
for you. Yeah,
sandwiches. That's good.
Catherine's a big egg eater. Yeah,
I am.
I ate eggs every morning for I think 8 to 10 egg whites every morning for 10 years. And wow,
Gosh.
I don't miss that. I have to say it. I don't miss it. I don't miss it.
It turns out you didn't even need to do the eggs. You could have just done the actual egg. You didn't even need to do the whole egg white thing.
Yeah, I came from the same school as you did about learning, hey, the cholesterol in egg yolks is terrible and you're all going to die. So I went full egg white. I went no yolks. Yolks are bad. Yolks are the devil. So yes, so that's good. Eggs for breakfast. Okay. So talk to me about, I've been navigating the podcast arena for about 8 years. I have a business podcast that I've done for a long time, and I kind of moved away from it because, quite frankly, I got bored. So how do you keep the momentum, and how do you source content to talk about? Now, that's kind of a loaded question since the world is so full of content right now. Yeah. So how do you kind of narrow it down, and what advice do you give people on how to source content and how to really create a backlog of information to talk about?
I mean, one of the things I give people, it's kind of like really, as you'll probably learn over this next hour or so, I'm all about the fundamentals and keeping it simple. And so when it comes to people wanting to do a podcast, it's like, do what you love. Like, if you love that subject matter, finding the content is very easy. So doing what you love could mean you read a lot of blogs in a particular niche. You follow a lot of podcasts in a particular niche. You're on your YouTube algorithm is all a particular niche. If that's what you love and you love talking about it, the well is overflowing. Like it's overflowing. And if you're struggling to find something, Andrew, it's because you probably don't love that thing. And like what happened with you, like after 8 years, you're like, I don't love this so much more. It's almost like a relationship. If you get to a point where you don't love that topic, then you will not be able to find, it's like a relationship. You'll not find a redeeming feature in the other person because all of a sudden you're out of love with that person. So yeah, I will super simplify a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today, Andrew. But like when it comes to like the idea of doing a podcast and like making part of your life, regardless if it provides you income or fame or fortune, if you don't love doing it, the doing it is pointless.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Catherine. I felt like you were about to ask a question. No, you first. Ladies first.
No, actually, so you jumped into the podcasting, but I was actually curious. Are you a northerner?
Where did you get that vibe from? Yeah.
And because you're in South Carolina now, right?
That's correct. I've been in Charleston, South Carolina, coming up on 6 years. I was born and raised in northern New Jersey. My parents were both immigrants. My mom was a Cuban refugee who came over from Cuba in the Freedom Flights in the late 60s. My father was a sailor from Spain visiting family. They got together, had a couple idiots, and I was born and raised in northern New Jersey. In the shadow of Manhattan. I've always lived and breathed within 10 miles of Midtown Manhattan, and always was like fascinated by, entertainment, the big city and all that stuff. And that's sort of like what's infused me for the rest of my life. So even though I've been in Charleston for 5 years, and there's a lot of expats from the north down here.
Right.
I've not changed my essence at all whatsoever. I'm still the same obnoxious kid growing up in Jersey.
Right.
So I'm from the East Coast as well. Do you miss anything about the East Coast? So we're in Texas outside of Dallas, and I find I miss a lot of things on the East Coast. I miss kind of the cultural aspect and the sharpness and kind of the flair of people on the East Coast. There's definitely a vibe. So I'm curious, do you miss anything?
To jump on your point is the culture thing. Like obviously being around New York City, you have like the ultimate melting pot. So like if you want to see like, an underwater basket weaving show, there's probably one going on in New York. If there's, if you wanted to eat like a rare Ethiopian meal, there's a place in New York. The idea that you can get all of these things in like a 10-mile square radius of Manhattan it's like, I don't want to say I miss it, but I will say that's one of the things that's lacking in other parts of the country of just this idea of like having so many options for things. It's funny. So when I moved down to Charleston, I assumed everything was going to be barbecue, right? I figured there'd be like a barbecue restaurant like every street corner. Turns out it's not. But what there is down here is Mexican food. Southerners love Mexican food.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, literally, I think there's a Mexican restaurant for every person, like 1-to-1 here. It's like that many. So again, you think, oh my God, the culture's weird there because like that. But no, it's just like they love their Mexican food here. So dining options, a lot of Mexican food down here. But it just goes to show you, like in New York, there probably aren't even as many Mexican restaurants per capita because of the wide variety of people that there are up there.
Right.
That's wild. Yeah, we definitely know Mexican restaurants here in Texas.
I'm sure you do.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will say the food in Texas is pretty good. We're not lacking, although it's hard to find, and I'm sure I'll get a bunch of hate comments for this, but it's hard to find good pizza here, especially being from the East Coast. I find
That's not true. We found a good pizza spot.
Yes, but it's not East Coast pizza. There's definitely a difference.
That and bagels.
Yes, I can't.
It's hard to find good bagels.
I will say the pizza argument is a little overblown. Me being a lifelong person from New York, New Jersey, because I, for one, I could be in a small minority here. I don't think there's such thing as bad pizza. Like, there could be poorly made pizza, but to me, all pizza's pretty good. Like, the combination of, like, dough, cheese, and sauce, like, it's really hard to mess that up. Like, how many times have we, growing up, we're, like, in our cafeteria, it's those Elio's frozen squares.
Yes.
And you eat them up.
Oh, my gosh,
I mean?
we talked about that.
If you look back at it, they're probably terrible, but, like, at the end of the day, it
was so
did
good.
Its job. It did its job. So, yes, I get what you're saying, that the quality is not the same. And obviously, New York, the whole Chicago, New York thing. But, like, to me, all pizza's good. I'm sorry. Like, I get into arguments with people, like, not that I would search out, but, like, I don't mind Domino's pizza. But, like, but pizza snobs will be like, oh, that's cardboard with, like, sauce on it. I'm like, still pizza to me, man. It still is.
It's
way to put me in my place about pizza. Now I totally have to redirect my thinking about pizza and be cautious about it.
You do you, Andrew. You do you.
That's too funny. So this podcasting journey is wild, right? So how did you kind of go from well, I shouldn't say how did you go from radio. Yeah. What prompted you to make the switch from radio, which, truth be told, my dream was always to be a DJ. Ever since I was a little kid, and it never happened, but I just always wanted to do that. But how did you make the transition from radio to podcasting, and kind of what was the tipping point or the tip of the spear that kind of had you jump over to electronic media differently than conventional radio?
Yeah, so Kat, Andrew, what I did was I was very lucky. When I was 20 years old, I got an internship at a radio station in New York called WPLJ. And if your viewers or listeners are familiar with the New York market, a legendary station, was there for 40 plus years. And I started as an intern there, and this is a rarity in the business of radio. I ended up spending the next 24 years of my life there. starting as an intern, working my way up the food chain to be eventually becoming co-host and executive producer of the morning show. So, and trust me, I'm aware of the fact that is incredibly rare in my industry. So I loved it. It was literally a dream come true that basically, and especially the spontaneity and the liveness of radio was like, if I had an idea for a bit, like the next time I cracked the mic open, we did it. Like there was no like large team or corporate structure that you had to clear ideas. Like literally, if you thought of it, you made it. And I think that kind of reflects into the digital space too now. But back then, it was not that. Like if you wanted to create a video content in the 90s or 2000s, it was like you needed 12 people, you needed the sound guy, the video. It was a big thing. But with audio, like literally you could do everything within seconds, you know? And so was very fortunate to have this career. And then towards the tail end of my 24-year run there, I saw the tea leaves. I saw the fact that podcasting was going to kind of supersede in a way that it would like change the reach. Whereas people like could only listen to you within your, 10-mile, 20-mile radius. Podcasting was global, right? So I started dabbling in it. I hosted my own podcast while I was still doing the morning show. It was exhausting, but I was doing this podcast once a week. It was called the Science of Sex Podcast, which was essentially me and a professor from NYU who is a PhD in sex. I think it was like she got her PhD in casual sex. We don't want to get down this rabbit hole, but essentially she got.
I did college all wrong.
Yes, no, I know. So did I. So she was a PhD, and I had pitched her this idea of like, what if we did a podcast based on like the science of sex, where you're the brains and I'm sort of like the everyman, sort of like just doing the fundamentals of hosting. So we did it for a couple of years, and it was a lot of fun. So I cut my teeth doing podcasting there. And then in 2019, my radio station was sold to a Christian broadcasting company based out of Northern California. It was called EMF. It doesn't sound like Christian, but the Education Media Foundation, but they're Christian broadcasters. They have radio stations all over the country. And so they wanted a station in New York. So at the time, the owners of my radio station were struggling financially. So the only way to make money was to sell radio stations. So they sold ours to this Christian broadcaster. And I like to say that I was fired by Jesus. And so Jesus took over the airwaves. We went from playing like pop music to praise music overnight. And then at that point, I was like, I know I'm probably not going to get a radio job that paid as well as I had. I mean, I had a very nice way of life. I've earned a lot of money, more than I probably should have doing that. And I'm like, I'm probably not going to be able to replicate this ever again. And then so shifted my focus to podcasting. And it just so happened that there was a publishing company based out of Charleston, South Carolina that had just started their own podcast division for their thought leaders, and they were looking for someone who had sort of similar skills of mine to run that program. And I've been doing that ever since for 6 years. During that, I've also created my own personal content where I've sort of built my own, as much as I hate to say the word brand, again, using all of the knowledge and wisdom that I accumulate over my 20 years of broadcasting. But that's really what the impetus was, Jesus, without sounding too religious. And here we are today.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Quite a story, quite a journey.
Yeah.
That's a cool origin story, I have to say. If you were a Marvel comic, that would be a really cool way to, cast your superhero persona.
Yeah. It's pretty prideful because a lot of people in my business don't survive for various reasons, whether they're, the ratings were in the toilet, competition, show not doing as well. But mine was completely and totally out of my hands. It was a corporate move. It was like literally like these Amazon workers that are being laid off by the thousands every day. It was just a stroke of a pen in a corner office somewhere that made this decision. So it sucks, but in a way I felt sort of more at ease of it. It was like totally out of my control, nothing I did, and now I got to do something else.
Yeah, and you landed in a good spot.
Yeah. Oh no, I've been very fortunate. And it's so funny. So when my wife and I first came down here, my first week on the job was March 9th of 2020. And I don't know if you guys can remember that far back, but there was this little pesky pandemic that popped up 5 days later. So it was an odd time to start here. Wow. Like literally my first week, I was in the office, and week 2, I was working from this little apartment that we were renting temporarily.
Remote.
And we didn't know what to do. I would say it was a very strange time for a new career in a new city during a global pandemic. I would not advise anyone to do that. But still, it worked out great. We loved it down here. We loved, because we mainly were like, at the point of our lives, is like, we want to own a home. As you guys know, when you're near a metropolitan area, owning a home is not really affordable, especially if you want to live in something decent. Yes. So we were always kind of like looking towards that, and also near a community that's a little warmer. We didn't feel like we needed to do the Florida thing. No disrespect to anyone in Florida. But so Charleston was kind of the best of both worlds. Really great urban environment, a lot of great restaurants, really cool people. Sort of like New York, where there is like this melting pot of like people from all over the country that live here now. So yeah, so it's been a great experience, and we really, truly do love living in the Charleston area.
That's awesome.
It's awesome.
So you talked about your journey, but you left one thing out, and I want to ask you about it because I'm super curious. So the Upright Citizens Brigade, talk about your experience there.
Yeah. So my whole life was basically behind a microphone, right? So I always had this performer gene in me. Not that I was like a great singer. I'm a terrible singer. I'm really good at karaoke, terrible singer. But I always felt comfortable in crowds. But because of radio, you really just didn't have that outlet to do so. And being in New York, like I joked with you earlier, like you have access to anything. Like if you want to take a class for anything, you can find it. And this was like the late 90s. The improv scene in New York exploded where, no joke, folks, there were 3 full-time theaters that had improv 7 days a week.
Wow.
3.
That's wild.
Like, in most cities, you're lucky to have one that does it a couple nights a week. But so popular that there was actually 3, and the biggest was the one you mentioned, Kat, was UCB, which was founded by Amy Poehler and a couple of guys from Chicago. Very popular, and it was actually kind of funny for people not familiar. The UCB theater was located in the basement of a supermarket. Like, this is how...
Oh, wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, it was the supermarket was Gristides, which is like a local supermarket, but literally you would enter on the side of Gristides, go down the stairs, and you would be doing these shows like rock stars, like,
oh, that's awesome.
The best of improv performed there, right? And so I'd always wanted to learn, and I figured not only would it be good for me to like for my creative genes, but also the fact that I could like use a lot of the skills that I would be practicing and learning in my day-to-day, you know, being on the radio.
Right.
So I signed up for improv classes, and I like inhaled it. Like they have like they had this college structure of like improv 101, 201, 301. I went through 101 to 401 in less than a year because I was like, I love this so much. And then I ended up finding my own community in there. So just meeting people, and then we started a sketch comedy group that we toured across the country for like a couple of years. And so it was a great experience. And, you know, I write a lot about my experience in improv in my book because of the fact that there's a lot of like things that you don't realize is really good for improvisers. That's amazing for like your real life and your business. So yeah, so if you have like an improv anything in your community, and I'm not saying that you want to have like delusions of being on SNL, but like just the idea of like learning a skill set that can be very important to you, whether it's at home or whether it's in your office, I would definitely encourage anyone to sign up for an improv class.
Can you describe a little more of what you learned in the skills and how that translated into your book? So what was important to you about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when you're in radio and you're performing, and this could go for like in real life too. So when you're performing, all you're doing is waiting for other people to stop talking for you to say your funny thing. Like that's life, right?
Right.
Like most people, if they're out to dinner or they're at a party or even in their office, they're waiting for the person to stop talking so they could say the wittiest, most amazing line of dialogue ever created, right?
That's so funny.
And I think that's most people. And what improv teaches you is that, and you may have heard this sort of the phrase, yes and. Mm-hmm. Improv teaches you to listen so you can say yes and build onto what that person says. And so if you don't do that, the scene doesn't work. They're called scene partners, right? And it starts usually with 2 people, and you could build out on it and have more people. But it starts with 2 people, one person saying something, the other person agreeing and adding to it, and then the next person saying yes and adding to that. And so you may say, like, so how does that help in real life? Well, think about it. If you're wired to be listening to other people, that makes you instantly attractive. That makes you someone who's like receptive to what another person's saying and not just waiting for them to stop talking.
Right.
And the best improvisers are not like the funniest people or the wittiest people. They're the ones who can agree onto something they're listening to and building on that. And that's where the humor and they call it the game of the scene comes from, the unusual thing that you find when you're working with someone else. And that is sort of like the basics of improv, Kat. But essentially, if you think about that, if you take those basics and extrapolate that to whether you're a podcaster, whether you lead a company, whether you're the patriarch or matriarch of a family, if you can hone those skills, that not only makes you a better performer, but it makes you a better human being.
I love that. It's interesting, the correlation with, so Andrew's, he's been coaching for years and being able to coach. And we've heard that in coaching, yes. And so it's interesting to hear that is also something in the improv world.
They stole that from the improv world, Kat. That was created in the 70s.
I'm seeing that.
Yeah, that was created in the 70s. In I believe it was like the old school like SNL cast, like the Bill Murrays and Gilda Radner.
Right.
That came from the Chicago improv scene of the 70s, and that's where that started, and it built out to become what it is today. But that essentially, that idea of, and they call and the real word is called long form improvisation, like because you're basically, it's not like the fast stuff that you see on like whose line is it anyway. It's more of like the scene and living in the moment. So that was really cool. Another thing that I learned, and I write about this in the book, is that one of my very first improv teachers, his name was Anthony Tamanek. And you may not know the name, but he was famous for a few years because he did the Donald Trump talk show on Comedy Central. It was called The President's Show, and he played Donald Trump. He was like one of the first guys to do a Trump impression and was very popular for a long time. He had a bit part in 30 Rock, and he was like this crazy improviser, like could just basically, he could improvise he could improvise with Robin Williams. Like he was like just an amazing mind.
That's
and
awesome.
One of the lessons he said, well, the first thing he said, he goes, I probably shouldn't be teaching 101 because I'm kind of a nut. And I've learned that, yeah, you're right. You're a bit of a nut. But the other thing he said is when you're doing a scene, that scene is the most important moment in that person's life. Think about it. Like when you're doing a scene, the scene is not like, I went to the store, I bought some groceries, I went home, right? That's not a scene. The scene is like, I went to the store, brought some groceries, and there was a robbery. And that would be the most important moment in that person's life. So if you take that framework, right, and you put that into your normal day, like every interaction is the most important moment of the day, man, think about how much you can like heighten the experience you have with other people if you give that level of importance to these interactions. And so that's why improv scenes teach you that, because you want it to be like this incredible thing that's happening between these two people, because otherwise it's not interesting. And if you think about it, if you take that to your normal day and say, I'm going to be so invested in this conversation, I'm going to listen, react, I'm going to yes and, I'm going to do all that stuff. Man, not only will it be a great experience for the other person, it'll make everything whole. Like it'll literally like make it feel like everything matters. And I think we're sort of like in a matters deficit nowadays. Like everyone feels like they don't matter in the world. If you can do your part in making feel like they matter and making think that something's going on there matter, man, think about what a better place we would be in.
So true.
Amen.
Definitely.
Amen. Yeah, definitely need more of that. So going through kind of your backstory is really fascinating, I have to say. So do you listen to podcasts? And if you do, who do you kind of like to listen to? How do you kind of continue to stay on top of your game? How do you continue to hone in on your skills? You know, as lifelong learners, right, we need to continue to stay sharp. So how do you keep that energy into reinvesting in yourself, and who helps source that info for you? Do you have any sort of influences that you really kind of gravitate towards?
So I will say when I do my podcast listening now, it's usually when I'm walking my dog, and it's usually for fun. So my podcast listening nowadays is just like check my brain at the door, because I'm literally like producing like 50 hours of podcast content for myself and clients every week. So when you say, do I listen to podcasts? Yeah, I do. But it's mostly because it's like I have to, right?
Right.
So the podcasts I listen to are just really my like check my brain fun stuff, and sometimes news. So I'll listen. So if I feel like I'm not really like engaged in what's going on in the latest news cycle, like I'll listen to Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher on the Pivot podcast. If I want to listen to what's going on in the world of entertainment, because I've always been a fan of showbiz, I'll listen to The Town with Matt Bellany. If I really want to get comic book nerdy and MCU nerdy, there's a couple of guys from Australia called the Weekly Planet that talks about all the stuff, in the nerd world. So I do have my go-tos of stuff I'll listen to, but I'm so deep into the woods of creating these podcasts, I don't get a chance to listen as much to other people. But I will say that is one of the benefits of TikTok, Andrew, is because of the fact that I can get my daily helping of what people are doing in the world and the best of the best. And when I mean the best of the best, I mean like the most popular. So like Theo Von and Joe Rogan's of the world pop up on my algorithm all the time. So I'll see what they're doing and I try to stay aware, because I think if you want to be successful in whatever you do, you kind of have to love the thing you do. Right? Like, I don't think, like, for me to be in radio for 24 years, if I didn't love radio, I don't think I would have been good at it. And if I didn't admire people in radio, I wouldn't be good at it. So I think it's important that whatever you do, whether you choose to do a podcast, whether you want to be a social media star, be a YouTuber, if you don't love that world you're in, it's kind of hard, because I'm a big believer in the C to B. Like, you've got to see someone to envision yourself to be that. So if you can't do that, I don't know how it works. Like, maybe there are people out there that like hate podcasting but do a podcast. There probably is, but I have a feeling those are sort of pretty rare.
Yeah. I can't imagine doing this and hating it. That just seems like it wouldn't translate well to the audience. So
and Andrew, when I talk to clients, like I help these entrepreneurs and people who want to be thought leaders, and the very first question is like, do you love having conversations with strangers? You know? I say that. Like, and if that is not something that interests you, then don't do a podcast. And I'm sure my bosses don't like when I say that to people, but like, only do this if you really love the idea of having a conversation with a stranger, because most people don't. And I get it. There's a comfort level to it. And if you don't, and also if you don't care what the stranger says, like, what's the point of it?
Right.
But yeah, so I think I think it's essential for anyone to be successful in whatever they do is they got to kind of love that thing, or it's not going to work. It's hard to really fake it till you make it in that kind of respect.
Yeah. And, I find that the people that I gravitate towards, and I don't know if this is revolutionary, is more of the storytellers, right? Someone that really can captivate you in a story and unlock the imagination in your brain, where you're actually kind of seeing the movie in your head as far as from the story they're telling. So I really appreciate that. That's why I gravitated towards podcasting, just because I love listening and learning about people. So that's a great point.
Another thing you brought up people that I love is that they're having fun while they're doing it.
Yes.
Like, you ever see a movie and you see like an actor who maybe shouldn't be in this role, but they're doing it for whatever reason, and it looks like they're having a freaking blast?
Yes.
Like, that's, to me, that's like the secret sauce. Like, that's the magic juice. Like, man, if they're enjoying it so much, like, I'm going to enjoy it. So that to me is like something that's a lot missing sometimes, that people don't show how much fun they're doing this. Like, it's like, man, it's like, I always tell people, like, treat podcasting like a hobby, but with the mindset of a profession, where you have to do it. It's something that you have to do regularly, or if you're kind of atrophy, you won't be good at it. So, like, to me, I love seeing people enjoying what they're doing. I know it may sound weird and sort of like voyeuristic, but like, if the other people aren't enjoying it, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it.
Right.
Sure.
Fun is magnetic. My mom used to tell me that. She'd be like, you should change your outlook. When I was a teenager, she's like, people are attracted to fun. If you look like you're having fun and you're smiling and you're having a good time, other people want to be part of that. There's like there's that connection there. So I completely agree. I have another question. So I am really curious about the witches of Bushwick. So what made you do this, and where did the idea come from? Talk about that.
Yeah. So as you guys can tell, I'm a big like showbiz nerd, and I'd always wanted to be in movies, but growing up in New Jersey with immigrant parents, I did not have the the key to Hollywood. I didn't have the golden ticket to Hollywood. So I'd always in the back of my mind, always like, man, wouldn't it be great to make a movie, right? And then the next thing I know, I go into a decades-long radio career. But going back to the point that if you're in New York City, you could take a class for everything, I basically found a screenwriting class. And so I signed up for it. And you know how, like, and I don't know if you guys ever done this. You watch a movie and you're like, screenwriting, that seems easy, right? They just write an idea down and like that. No, it's really hard. Like, even like you watch a bad movie, it's really, really hard to write a screenplay. And it was really hard for me. And it's actually kind of funny. Like, I think people should experience something to see how hard it is to then so they could sympathize and empathize with other people. Like if you took like a yoga class or a fitness class, they're like, man, that's really hard. I totally respect people who do that, right? So I was like, so my respect level for creatives is through the roof, but sometimes I think we all get jaded by the amount of content that's out there. We're like, oh, that's shit, I'm not watching that. Yeah. But the idea of like doing it was like, man, this is really, really hard. But luckily what happened was, again, like when you become immersed in a community and you find other people like I did in my improv world, I met a friend her name was Catherine Delaloy, and she was an actress and screenwriter. She was originally from the UK, but had come to the States to pursue a career in entertainment. And she was in the class too. And we just got to talking, and we would always like shoot ideas back and forth about like, hey, we should do a project one time. And I'm sure you guys have all been in this world where everyone will say, let's do this thing. Oh, yeah. And then nothing ever happens. And she said to me, she goes like, okay, but you got to promise, because I've had a lot of people over the course of my life say, let's do this, and nothing materializes. Mm-hmm. And as you can tell from my vibe, folks, like I'm not that kind of person. So we were doodling around ideas, and this actually connects back to the Science of Sex podcast. So great job, Kat, doing this. So when I started working on that podcast with the NYU professor, her name was Dr. Jana, you become friends on Instagram, and then the Instagram gives you suggested friends, right? Yeah. And so all of a sudden, I kept seeing all of these witches, like women who identified as witches, whether it was like Wiccan or study witchcraft. And I was like, the hell is this? So I go to Jana and I'm like, Jana, do you have any idea why I would all of a sudden see witches in my feed? And she's like, oh, my assistant is a witch. I'm like, oh. And then my weird creative brain immediately jumped to, what would happen if an Instagram witch met a real witch? And so that was the log line for the film that I pitched to Katie. I'm like, Katie, what do you think about a movie where there's this world of influencer witches, but they get their comeuppance when they meet a real, honest to goodness witch? And that was essentially and the witches of Bushwick. So Bushwick, Brooklyn, this section of Brooklyn was like stupid with witches. Like there was actually there was like an occult store in Bushwick that sells like witchcraft supplies and books, and like is a thing. Like people go there for readings and stuff. So so I thought the play on the obviously 80s movie, The Witches of Eastwick, as you guys all remember, with Jack Nicholson and Cher and all those people. So I was like, well, look at me being all clever. What if we make it The Witches of Bushwick? Play on words there. So then me and Katie just started co-writing the screenplay together, and luckily she was a really good writer, so she could help flesh out all those previously stated difficulties that I told you about when it came to writing a screenplay. So we started writing it, and then all of a sudden we're like, it was a feature, right? Which is, full 2 hours. And we're like, how are we going to afford to make this? Like, this is going to cost a lot of money. So I said, well, why don't we just shoot the third act? Why don't we shoot the third act where like everything starts to really happen with the meetup of the real witch, and we turn it into a short film? So that's what we did. We cut it down to that third act. We then we said like, well, how much is this going to cost? And then funny enough, I said to Katie, how much do you think it's going to cost? She goes, oh, probably $10,000. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I could probably make that happen. Turns out bullshit. You can't do what we want to do for $10,000. And that ended up costing us $25,000.
Oh, wow.
But I will say that $25,000 film does not look like a $25,000 film, because luckily with Katie's contacts, we got like really, really experienced like director of photography, sound guys, makeup people. All of these people worked on it. We made it a SAG production. Like we had like all these actors with SAG cards.
Oh, that's
were in
awesome.
the film. And SAG has this thing called micro budget rates. So like if the film costs X amount of dollars, you only have to pay these actors like a couple $100 a day kind of thing. So, and then to really put the cherry on top, as we were going through this process, like, where are we going to shoot this? Because a majority of it, we were all in the New York City area, like, where are we going to find a forest that we could shoot in the middle of the night? So the person we had hired, like, we hired a casting director. This is how stupid I am. We hired a casting director. And so the casting director helped us cast the film, but she goes, you know what? And she was straight out of like Central Casting, this casting director, like talk with the big accent. She's like, you know what? My friend Tibor Feldman owns a house out in Woodstock, and this would be a perfect location. I'm like, oh, okay. Do you think he'd give us a good break? She goes, well, he's an actor. He'd probably give you a good break. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. Well, he didn't give me a great break. So he ended up charging me $5,000 to shoot on not a house, a compound in Woodstock.
Wow.
So we all lived and shot the film for 3 days in Woodstock, New York, in the middle of like the hottest day of the summer of 2019. There was no air conditioning. It was brutal. Luckily, we shot most of the scenes at night, and we ended up making this movie. Like, it was like an honest to goodness, real short film with dreams of like taking it on the road to film festivals.
Yeah.
But if you notice, I mentioned this was 2019. We ended up finishing the lock picture on January 1st of 2020. And all of the film festivals were then canceled in March. So we never had a chance to take it out. And we end up doing the virtual film festival route, which we won a bunch of awards, and it was a lot of fun. I actually got to see it on the big screen a couple of times once like some of the lockdown restrictions happened. But even though like it did not lead to anything else, like we at one point we were working with a production company in LA that liked the idea of turning this into a series, but that kind of went away. But I will say, no matter how much money I spent, the time and energy, I made a thing. And this is what I tell people when it comes to making something. They all get into their own head about, I can't do this because I need this piece of equipment, or I need this there, or I need this. Like, the people who've actually made something, they made something. You know what I mean? And again, going back to my simpleness of my life, it's like, that's the one thing a lot of people get in their head. Like, they find ways to not make a thing, even though they want to make a thing. So to me, that is one of the most prideful things I have in my life, is the fact that I took an idea that was born from, that flippantly came out of my mouth one day, and it became this 20-minute like short film that I was incredibly proud of.
Yeah.
And so, and I've had young kids like say to me, like a lot of my friends have like teenage kids, like, do you have any advice on how to make a film? I was like, do it. You got an iPhone, make it.
Yeah. Right.
And so I'm so proud of that. And again, not that it led to glory and fortune, but the fact that I made something is one of those underrated facets of life that people don't realize. And I think because of technology, more where people can embrace that like you can make something. You don't need a big production crew. You don't need SAG actors to do something. Just do it. So really proud of the fact that I was able to pull that off with my very limited experience in the world of film. But again, it's like finding that community, like find that community that you feel part of, people that are like-minded, people who love the idea. Like a lot of the people that worked on the film just wanted to do it because they thought it was going to be a fun thing.
Right.
Like I hired a drone guy for like $100. And it was like if you look at the drone shots in our film, you're like, oh my God, they must have gotten like a helicopter and shit to do it. Like, no, it's just a drone guy I paid $100 to, right?
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I mean, it's one of my things that I always lean on, is the fact that when I want to do something and I do it, it just gives you that instant pride. And I think more and more people find ways to not do something.
Yeah.
But if you can't, and the thing is, I always say, you can't take it away from you. Like that movie exists. It's out in the ether. They can't take it away from you. It's mine. Like, you guys in this podcast, when you guys do this podcast, you publish it, it's out there. No one can take it away from you. It's something you created, and people can listen or not listen to it. They could be a fan of it. They can glaze it. They can hate it, but it don't matter. You made a thing.
Yeah. I love that. I'm really big on execution and completing a project. And I have talked to so many people who say, well, exactly what you said. Oh, I feel like I don't have the right skill, or I don't have the right resources or things like that. So yes, just do it, complete it, do it anyway. And you do feel so good after you complete it. It's like, oh, I finished it. I completed it. So I love that.
So that brings up a point for me as far as kind of going back to social media. So you create this baby and you put this baby out for the public to judge. How do you deal, or have you had to deal with, kind of the negativity of opinions? So, I do a couple different podcasts. I do a sneaker podcast. I'm a huge sneaker collector, and it's amazing what people get offended by. Just talking about, like, we brought up episode where we were talking about relacing sneakers and how this color was not really aesthetically pleasing. And I can't believe the hate that came at me as far as, wow. And then I published something on LinkedIn about kind of the challenges with AI being kind of the screener now and trying to get through the door and get an interview, and how AI has impacted hiring practices. And I don't ever go viral, but I went viral on LinkedIn of all things, right? Like, lucky me. Wow. The hate that I received from that post was unbelievable. And I just thought I was just bringing up a topic of conversation. So how do you deal with if you have to deal with it, how do you consume that stuff? And does it impact you in a way that makes you discouraged, or does it encourage you to continue to publish?
Yeah, I would say that the algorithm that we live in today lives off the adage of all press is good press. So this is the one thing I want people to keep in mind when it comes to anything they create and put online. Even though people may hate it and comment on it, that's actually a good thing for you. That's the way to see that is the way I pivot it in my brain. Like, yes, we can all be sensitive to remarks and criticisms and stuff, but like, I think it's important for people to realize the world we live in. Like you run into people like, oh, I hate social media, I don't want to be involved. I'm like, that's cool. If you don't want to be involved in social media, but if you want to be like an author, a thought leader, a content creator, guess where you got to put that stuff? Got to be on social media. So that's the world we live in. And if you can embrace the fact that all comments, whether they're negative, they're good comments, because that's what feeds the algorithm. So that's the way I kind of separate, Andrew, that it's like, if there is some negativity coming through, that's actually a good thing for me. You know what I mean? Unless it's something like, not that I do this, but unless it's something that's offensive to other people. Like, I remember I did a video last year about Philly's Karen. I don't know if you remember this story.
Oh,
There's this lady down in Miami. She was a Phillies fan, and she'd had a ball taken away from her area, so she went over and ripped it out of a fan's hands. Big global thing, right? And at the time, the internet's fervor was like, identify Philly's Karen, right? It was it was like the mission of that we were all tasked was to find this woman, right? And my take was, and I didn't want, and people say, when I explained, they're like, oh, you're just being contrarian. I'm like, I don't want to be a contrarian for the sake of contrarian, because I know there's a lot of people who play that game. But my take was like, why? Like, what would the point of knowing who she is be? Like, for us, like, do I care who she is? I do not. Because her name became public, she'd probably lose her job. She'd probably be ostracized from her community. How does that benefit anyone? And I know there is this sort of mom mentality online that is probably one of the worst parts of the internet. But that was my take, was like, who cares, like, who she is? And then the amount of negativity I got from that probably drove the fact that it was probably my most viewed video, was because, and of course, here's how funny people are, Ken, Andrew. Their initial reaction was, this guy must be related to her. I'm like, first of all, I'm a Mets fan, so I'm highly offended by that. I would never be related to a Phillies fan. But second of all, like,
hey, I'm from Philly, just FYI.
Yeah, I don't have to be related to someone to feel empathy for that person. Like, she's probably gone through enough. Like, when she walks through her town and supermarket, she does probably get the
yes,
that is, and the dirty looks. Like, that's enough. She's paid for enough. There's no need. So going back to your question about like handling comments, to me, I saw that as almost like, it was almost like a social experiment. Like, oh, okay. I see how people view this world of like, yeah, I don't believe in empathy. Bullshit. Empathy don't mean shit. And so that's the way I didn't take it as an attack on me. It was more of an attack on like, yeah, I don't have to be empathetic to another human being. I'm like, and it's so funny. Like, a lot of the people were saying like, well, she didn't pay the price. What price?
Wow.
What price? What is the price? Like, I don't know. So she should be like living on the street because she took away a $10 baseball? Like, that makes no sense to me.
So extreme. Everything is so extreme.
And unfortunately, that is the algorithm too, Kat, of like, that's why in politics, the far right and the far left get the most activity because they play those extremes. The people that are moderate and play down the middle aren't as popular. That's unfortunate. But again, it's the world we live in. If you want to be part of the ecosystem of creativity, you got to be on social media and you got to be able to understand what negative comments mean.
Take the good with the bad.
Yeah. It's hard though not to take it personal. I think that's having a thick skin is not always easy. So
yeah. Oh, well, there are Andrew, I did this video, and not that I'm plugging all my videos, but I found this video on TikTok, and it was Aaron Rodgers, and he, former Jets quarterback, did not have a very amazing career with the Jets over 2 seasons. He's kind of and for most people, he's kind of a polarizing figure. Most people love or hate him. But he did this video once where he talked about, he goes, handling criticism. He goes, never take criticism from someone you would never ask advice to. And he thought about that. Like, if someone is criticizing you for someone, flip it. Be like, that person who said something negative to you, would you ever in a million years ask that person for advice?
Yeah.
And if you can harness that, man, how helpful will that be in your creative journey? Like if you see if you're a scientist and another scientist who's really good said something negative, you're like, oh shit, maybe I was wrong. But if it's just like some jabroni who's just spitting from the hip, who's probably like sitting on their toilet, shooting like shit on the internet. Like, would you ask that person for advice? So to your point, Andrew, when it comes to negativity, it's like, think about it from that lens of like, okay, here's this feedback you're getting someone. Would you ever ask this person for anything else?
Right.
And so I think that's a healthy way of handling, any kind of criticism or negativity online. Like, would you ever ask that person for advice? I
love that sentiment. And I love the quote, never measure yourself through the eyes of the joyless. So, kind of similar in that same veins. But it's hard. You put your baby out there and no one likes their baby called ugly. So sometimes it stings a little bit more than others. But I like that advice, and it's something I need to keep more in the forefront because, you know what it's like, especially for people like me that record, do all the production, do all the editing, right? It's a lot of work. But I don't think people realize you just don't get on camera and shoot a podcast and it's like, okay, we're done, right? Let me hit post. There's a lot of effort that goes on behind the scenes, cutting clips, making content, polishing, and just writing script. So I think putting that out there and then being judged, which is part of the process, sometimes doesn't feel great. So I really love that advice.
Well, Andrew, if you think about it, it's never been easier to shit talk people. Like,
yes,
not
you're right.
Any of you people, but like I grew up in a world where if you had a problem with someone on the radio or someone on television, it required you to sit down and write a letter.
Right.
Put that letter in an envelope, take that envelope to the post office, drop it in a box, and then wait to see if that person receives it. And nowadays, look how easy it is.
So true.
You take that process and it's encapsulated into like a matter of seconds. So, in a way, again, it's the world we live in, but you also have to think about that. Like, that comment is coming from someone who the hours you spent on that thing, that person took maybe all of 10 seconds to write that comment. So, they didn't write that letter. They didn't go in an envelope. They didn't go to the post office and send it to you. They basically did that just one thing. So just keep that in mind in terms of like the effort you put into something and the effort it takes for someone to give you feedback.
Such good advice. Thank you for sharing that. That's helpful for me to kind of recenter sometimes and remind myself that, people are not putting a lot of effort into the negativity. They're just being negative. So
it's usually zero effort, Andrew. They're not doing like a full YouTube breakdown of your YouTube. Like no one was going through your LinkedIn post and then spending the next 3 hours creating a content based around what you said, right? If that happened, Andrew, you're probably like, oh, maybe we fucked up with the lace thing here because this guy did a whole web breakdown and put it on YouTube and it's got 1 million views. Then maybe there is some weight to that comment. But if it's just a 2-sentence or 1-sentence line on a post, man, let it go.
Absolutely. So we recently went to, I'm going to pivot a little bit, but because I want to go back to your book. We recently went to Podfest. I don't know if you've ever been.
Never been. It's on my bucket list. Yeah.
It was interesting. And so one of the things that resonated with us, and I never even thought about this, was podcast to book. So there's kind of a trend right now, or at least they called it like a trend, as far as people taking their podcasts and translating it into a book. So you've written a book, right? And I'm actually curious to read it now. I've been kind of reading the synopsis, so I will be reading your book. Have you ever dove into that, or has that ever been a thought? Is it okay? Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So my aforementioned clients that I work with are all folks that want to be thought leaders in their industry, right? And so what we call in our business, and you might have heard this phrase before, is anchor content. So anchor content is anything that you can create and build off of it. So I consider a podcast, and this is what a lot of my clients do. They use the anchor content of a podcast and use that for a chapter in the book, for a blog post, for a social media post. So sometimes when it comes to content creation, think about what kind of anchor content you can make, and then that can divvy off into all different realms. So it's funny to hear that podcast to book thing, because essentially I've been doing that for 5 years with folks, but it's not as intentional as being like, oh, how can I turn this podcast into a book kind of thing. It was very organic of like, oh, I did this one podcast with Alex, Andrew, and Kat, and I could probably make a blog post out of that. And so, or I can it could be a chapter in my next book. So I think for anyone, when it comes to creating content, find something that you can, pardon to steal the name of your show, but like find something that could be in a well that you can fill up with as much stuff as possible. And then you could take like little cups and buckets out and reuse it for other things. So my book, Andrew, came from the fact that when I made the transition from working in entertainment media to business media, I had this like air of sort of like imposter syndrome, right? And it was that, what am I going to say to like a CEO? I don't know any of these acronyms. I don't know what ROI means. I don't know what, I don't know how to use Excel spreadsheets. Like, what can I possibly say to someone like this, right? And I shortly after doing it for a little while, I realized at the end of the day, it's all the same shit. It's people who have a story to tell, and my job was to help them tell the story. And so the way I was helping them to tell their story was using anecdotes and stories from my life and my career that could help them in doing what they do. Because I always feel like it's the C2B thing. If I could give someone an example of something that I'd been through, that can help them going forward. And so I'd had all these things top of mind that I was using on my clients. So I went to my publisher and I'm like, and you know how comedians, when they talk, they'll say, when they're working on a bit, they'll say, is this a thing? And I said to my publishers, I'm like, is this a thing? Like, is this idea of like the stories of my experiences in radio and how it can help people become better communicators and become better at podcasts, is this a thing? And they're like, yeah, that's a thing. So I just started basically from the top of mind, like all of these stories that I was reusing constantly to help people become better communicators. And that's what Good Listen became. It was like all these little things that I was already telling people on my day-to-day, but I said, like, how can I help more people outside of my clients with the knowledge and wisdom that I acquired over my very lucky 20 plus years in radio broadcasting? And so that's how the book came along. It was just from my day-to-day of working with people. I'm like, oh, these stories can actually help more and more people than the folks I work with every day. But do love the idea of podcast the book. I think the book at the end of the day is the world's best business card. And I know a lot of people may not like the sound of that, but like when you ever watch a TV show and you see like that lower third chyron, 9 out of 10 times, no matter what that person has accomplished, it says author of blank.
Right.
And it does add this level of authority. So if you're a content creator, do podcasts, YouTube, it may not seem as modern and hip to have a book, but there's still nothing in 2026 that still has that air of authority that a book does. I mean, I think podcast is starting to have that. Like you'll see, like I always joke that David Axelrod, the guy who ran Barack Obama's campaign back in the day, like when you see him on CNN, on the bottom it'll say, David Axelrod, host of the Axe podcast. Not David Axelrod, former Obama, campaign manager. It says host of the Axe podcast because the idea of having a podcast does give you a level of authority. So a book does that in spades. It like really does give like a level of importance to the work you're doing. And even though if it sells 1 copy or 1 million copies, it doesn't matter. It's going back to our point of you made a thing and people can choose to either read it or not read it.
Right. I
love that. So kind of as we wrap up here, this hour has blown by. So I kind of asked this question in closing, and sorry to put you on the spot, but when we published this LinkedIn post, what about us made you want to kind of come on this show? Like with all your experience and, seriously, impressive background, resume, and presence, why us?
I like having conversations with people that have fun. I like talking to people who like get off, pardon the crudeness of it, of just having a fun chat. Like that's my vibe. Like there's nothing that makes me feel better than having a conversation with people that just like enjoy the idea of a conversation. And then that's what it seems like you two do. And, you've been doing for 20 something episodes, but like, I'm sure you guys have done it way longer than that. So I will never, I know this sounds kind of like weird. I'll never turn down an opportunity to have a chat with somebody. Like if they really want to like get to know what's on my mind, if I could help other people, like it's very rare for me to turn down like a podcast that's either new or nascent. I mean, I'll stay away from like controversial things because I don't need that shit. But as long as you're talking about fun things and enjoying I think that's one of the things that I feel like is I don't have many gifts, but I do have enthusiasm to connect. Like when I go out to a restaurant, like I'm that guy that talks to the waiter. If I go to the shop in my car, I'm there talking to the guy who's underneath my car, asking him questions about his career. Because I just enjoy it. And that's sort of I don't want to call it a superpower because it's not much of a superpower, but like I really genuinely am enthusiastic about having connections with other people. So, I feel like we did it today and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well.
Yes, definitely.
I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know more about you and I would love to continue the conversation in a future episode. If you'd be inclined, I would love to have you back on and learn more about you and continue to have a casual. I feel like there's a lot more storytelling we can get into. This was just an introduction to get to know you. And I'd love to hear, one of the questions I wanted to ask, and we'll do it for a future episode, but I would love to hear the crash and burn stories, right? Like the dirt, the good, I had a guest on and wow, that completely went haywire.
Well, Andrew, if you read my book, Good Listen, you will see my crash and burn Taylor Swift story.
Oh, perfect.
Which is not
awesome.
Which is not one of my proudest moments, but I did learn a lot, and it's one of those examples I give to people when it comes to like, don't do the same things I did.
I love it. Well, Joe, we really appreciate you spending time with us today and getting to know you, and thank you for taking us up on the offer. So it means a lot to us to connect with people. We also really enjoy having conversations, and I love getting to know people. So this was great. I greatly appreciate your time today. And we'll make sure to put all your info in the show notes so people can find you and learn more about you and buy your book if they want to buy your book and listen to your podcast and follow you on all your socials. Mm-hmm. I will be going to do that after the show, which I try and do all the time. So you'll see my various TikTok posts, and I'm sorry, it's a lot of sneaker content. So
that's okay. I love a good sneaker. Don't worry. I'm not going to pay more than $100 for a sneaker, but I do love a good sneaker.
So we appreciate it. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with in closing?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I talk about is involuntary kindness. We all have this knee-jerk reaction when we bump into someone on the street and we automatically say, "Oh, sorry about that." Like, don't we all do that? Like, if you step on someone's foot, "I'm sorry about that."
Right.
And I call that involuntary kindness. Like we don't even think. We automatically say sorry. And I want people to think about that and using involuntary kindness in the rest of their day to day. Like the next time someone cuts you off, the next time something bad happens at work, give the person grace. Let's start to give each other a little grace and not stew so much into the negativity and the shit that's going on in the world. Think about how quickly you are to forgive someone for bumping you into the hallway, but stew for hours about the single interaction you had at work.
Yes.
Let's try to bring some of that involuntary kindness to our day-to-day, and I think we'll try to all make ourselves a better human and build a better place to live in.
Right.
I love that phrase, and I think you just titled this podcast, Involuntary Kindness. So thank you for that. That's a great way to leave the audience with that's some wisdom right there. So really appreciate that thought. I'm going to use that. So I will give you credit, but I'm definitely going to use that. Involuntary kindness.
There's no such thing as an original idea, Andrew. Andrew, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great. And thank you. So this is another episode of The Well. I'm Drew.
And I'm Kat.
And we'll talk to you later. Awesome.